Hi and welcome to this Comics and Lit guide to AQA Language Paper 1, Section A. I'll show you how to tackle every question in the reading section with the tips you need to push into the higher band marks and aim for a grade 9. I'll be making a separate video on Section B, the writing section, so look out for that if you want full exam coverage. Since the 2026 paper brings in some new changes to the question formats, this guide will walk you through what's different and how to prepare with confidence. We'll be using an AQA sample paper as our example. It uses an extract from the novel Life of Pi by Jan Martel. If you want to practice alongside my walkthrough, I've linked the extract in the comments so you can download a copy. First, the basics. The paper is called Explorations in Creative Reading and Writing. You have 1 hour and 45 minutes to complete it. Section A has 4 questions on a fiction extract, testing your ability to read, understand, and analyse. You should spend about an hour on this section. Section B is about your own creative writing, which takes 45 minutes. Each section is worth 40 marks, making 80 in total for the paper. First step, skim read the questions and read the source. Before reading the source, spend a minute or two studying the reading questions in Section A. This will take a little mental load off, since the questions will tell you a bit about the story of the extract. In particular, look closely at question 4. This question uses a statement offering an opinion about the story, which you will have to evaluate. If you read it, you'll notice it actually gives you some essential information to help you understand the text. Take a look. In this part of the source, where the hyena comes out from under the tarpaulin, it could be seen as funny rather than threatening. The writer suggests that the hyena is actually no serious threat to Pi. This tells me that the source includes a hyena which hides under a tarpaulin and that it could be funny or threatening to the character of Pi. So I would know I'm dealing with a dramatic scene featuring a dangerous animal. Your next job is to read the source itself. The exam board recommends you spend 15 minutes reading the source carefully. This is up to you, but in my personal experience, students often struggle completing the reading questions with enough time to spare for the 40-mark writing section. So, considering you only have a precious 1 hour and 45 minutes, aim to keep the reading down to about 8 to 10 minutes, which will buy you a little more time to answer the questions. Read the source at least once to get your head around the plot and structure of the extract. If you have time, you could read it a second time to really get to grips with it and know what's going on. A top tip is to take a very simple note next to each paragraph, recording a word to describe the mood or a reference to the action that's happening. Keep an eye on the clock and aim to start your questions after 10 minutes and certainly no later than 15 minutes. Now, let's look in detail at each question in the reading section. Question 1 is worth 4 marks and tests you on the skill of comprehension. That's your basic understanding of the text. The question instructs you to look at a specific section of the source. In our example, this is lines 1 to 9. You are given 4 simple questions with 3 multiple choice answers. You should shade the circle in the box indicating the correct answer for each question. Before answering, quickly reread the section instructed, then simply read each question in turn and select the answer which you think is correct. Let's do one together. I'll read the section of the source first, then present you with each multiple choice question. It was the hyena that worried me. I had not forgotten Father's words. Hyenas attack in packs whatever animal can be run down. They go for zebras, gnus, and water buffaloes, and not only the old or the infirm in a herd, but full-grown members too. They are hardy attackers, rising up from the buttings and kickings immediately, never giving up for simple lack of will. And they are clever. Anything that can be distracted from its mother is good. I could hear the hyena whining. I clung to the hope that a zebra, a familiar prey, and an orangutan, an unfamiliar one, would distract it from the thoughts of me. I kept one eye on the horizon, one eye on the other end of the lifeboat. Now, look at question 1.1. What worries Pi about the hyena? The options are its appearance, remembering what his father told him about hyenas, and the noise it is making. Can you identify the correct answer? It's the second option, remembering what his father told him about hyenas, which links to the sentence, "I had not forgotten my father's words." As you can see, the wording is not exactly the same, which is where you are being tested on your close reading skills. Now, pause the video and look at the other 3 questions. Decide which option you would choose for each. So, the correct answers were 1.2, hyenas attack as a group, 1.3, hyenas are tough attackers, and 1.4, Pi hopes the other animals on the boat will distract the hyenas. Hopefully you can see this question is straightforward and should bag you an easy 4 marks, provided you read the text carefully before answering. Let's move on to question 2. You should be starting this question about 13 to 15 minutes into the exam if you're following my timings. Question 2 focuses on a specific section of the extract. Again, you must only use the section provided for your answer. It is a language analysis question and is worth 8 marks. Aim to spend 10 minutes on this question. Let's take a look at the question in the sample paper. You're directed to a particular set of lines, but don't worry too much because they provide the exact lines on the exam paper itself. Beneath the extract is your question. In this case, how does the writer use language here to describe the hyena's appearance? The key words here are language and hyena's appearance, which you should highlight to remind yourself to refer back to it in your response. Beneath this, there are some bullet points recommending what to look for. You could include the writer's choice of words and phrases, language features and techniques, and sentence forms. So, how do we approach this question? Well, you're marked on your ability to identify and analyse the effect of a range of language techniques linked to the question. I've created a helpful acronym here, which gives you an essential set of techniques to memorise to answer this question. Warm Hills stands for word classes, alliteration, repetition, mood, hyperbole, imagery like simile, metaphor, and personification, listing, a lexical or semantic field, and sentence forms. If you want to study in more detail, perhaps pause the video and take notes. Your first job is to carefully read and annotate the extract for relevant techniques. When you found one, label it with a letter to remind you of the technique you've identified. This note will jog your memory when you are writing your answer. You want to annotate in 2 to 3 minutes, leaving about 7 minutes to answer the question. I'll read through the extract now. As I do so, think about which words, phrases, or sentences stand out to you for analysis. Can you identify particular techniques? I am not one to hold a prejudice against any animal, but it is a plain fact that the spotted hyena is not well served by its appearance. It is ugly beyond redemption. Its shaggy coarse coat is a bungled mix of colours, with the spots having none of the classy ostentation of a leopard's. They look rather like the symptoms of a skin disease. The head is broad and too massive, with a high forehead like that of a bear, but suffering from a receding hairline, and with ears that look ridiculously mouse-like, large and round when they haven't been torn off in battle. The mouth is forever open and panting. The nostrils are too big, the tail is scraggly and unwagging. All the parts put together look dog-like, but like no dog anyone would want as a pet. There are loads of valid choices for analysis here, but perhaps you've spotted the simple sentence, it is ugly beyond redemption. The listing of adjectives, shaggy and coarse. The noun phrase, bungled mix of colours. The similes, like symptoms of a skin disease, a high forehead like that of a bear, and mouse-like. There are more, but you'll want to select perhaps 4 to 5 quotes if you're looking to hit the top of the marks. Here are the skills the examiner is looking for. A student should show perceptive and detailed understanding of language. They should analyse the effects of the writer's choices of language. They should select a range of judicious textual detail. And they should make sophisticated and accurate use of subject terminology. Let's read a response which would hit all of these criteria for 8 marks out of 8. Look at how much detail is given for each quote and consider the quality of vocabulary which is used to analyse the effect on the reader. Firstly, the hyena's appearance is presented as grotesque and offensive, as if it's an outcast within the animal kingdom. The noun phrase, bungled mix of colours, implies there is no purpose or intention to the hyena's design. In particular, the adjective bungled has connotations of an error or failure, suggesting the hyena is an abomination. Furthermore, the writer uses comparison in classy ostentation of the leopard. Here, the formal noun ostentation emphasises the leopard's almost regal superiority. The contrast seems to amplify the sense of repulsion the reader feels about the hyena. The writer also creates imagery of sickness and disease in the simile, like symptoms of a skin disease, painting a picture in our minds of contagious and scabbed skin, which is not only unpleasant, but also heightens the sense of apprehension in the reader. Finally, the writer uses humour to mock the appearance of the hyena. For example, the simile mouse-like and the personification receding hairline both build a comical image which jars with the more sickening descriptions, perhaps highlighting the sense of horror. But briefly presenting the hyena as laughable, the writer creates a sharp contrast with the repulsive imagery of disease and decay, making its ugliness even more disgusting. This mixture of ridicule and disgust ensures the reader sees the creature as both absurd and abhorrent, reinforcing its position as an outcast in the natural order. This is a top-band answer because it selects a range of highly relevant quotations, precisely identifies a range of techniques, and goes into real depth with precise vocabulary to explain the effect of each technique. Now, that's a tall order to pull off in 10 minutes, but if you practice again and again, you'll learn to work quickly and efficiently. Let's move on to question 3. Question 3 is your structure analysis question. In writing, structure is the way a writer organises a text to achieve certain effects on the reader. This question is worth 8 marks, so like question 2, you should spend about 10 minutes on it. To analyse structure, you need to think about what the writer includes at the beginning, middle, and end, and how the focus moves from one idea to another. Let's look at the question. First, you will be informed you now need to think about the structure of the source as a whole, followed by a statement to orient the extract. In this case, this text is from the middle of a novel. The question then follows: how has the writer structured the text to create tension? The key words here are structured and tension, which you should highlight to remind yourself to refer back to in your responses. Beneath the question, you'll see 3 bullet points reminding you of general ways you could approach the question. How tension has increased or decreased by the end of the source. How the writer uses structure to create an effect. And the writer's use of any structural features such as changes in mood, tone, or perspective. These bullets do not act as a guide to how to analyse the text necessarily, but rather offer a range of things which you could comment on. So, how do we approach this? You'll be marked on your ability to identify structural techniques and explain how they impact the reader's thoughts and emotions as they read. To make this easier, I've created an acronym to remember some of the key techniques which commonly occur. Remember shifters. S for setting, how changes in location impact the plot. H for hook opening. These are details the writer includes in the opening to grab our attention. I for interesting contrasts which occur across the text, e.g. dark to light or action to calm. F for focus shifts, where a writer switches from characters to setting to action or zooms in or out on specific details. T for tension, how action rises or lowers tension across the text. E for endings. These could be cliffhangers, resolutions, or circular narratives, returning to ideas which were established at the beginning. R for repetition, things like emotions or actions which occur repeatedly. And S for sentence structures, where a writer uses longer, complex sentences to give key insights, or perhaps shorter, simple sentences to add drama or pace. The same as question 2, your first job is to annotate the extract for these features. I advise you to always select at least one quote from the opening and ending paragraph so you can analyse shifts in tone or perspective from the beginning to the end. You'll also want to select evidence from somewhere near the middle to offer insight into how tension rises or falls throughout. Spend about 2 to 3 minutes selecting and labelling quotes, then around 7 minutes writing your answer. If you haven't already read the extract, perhaps pause the video and do that now. Otherwise, let's go through some evidence with interesting techniques for analysis. From the beginning, I've selected the first line, "It was the hyena that worried me," a focus which establishes the hyena as a threat and creates an internal focus on the character's emotions. From the middle, we could analyse either the shift in focus to a detailed description of the hyena's appearance in a bungled mix of colours, or perhaps the rise in tension as the hyena did 1 lap, 2, 3, 4, 5 and onwards. From the ending, we could analyse the contrast in behaviour as the hyena did not move from the restricted space for the rest of the day, creating an anticlimax and reducing the tension for the reader. Once you've selected your evidence, you'll have only 7 to 8 minutes to write your response. To get top marks, the examiners are looking for the following skills: shows perceptive and detailed understanding of structural features, analyses the effects of the writer's choices of structural features, selects a range of judicious examples, makes sophisticated and accurate use of subject terminology. Let's look at an example which hits all of these criteria. The writer uses the opening line to establish a sense of threat, immediately raising the tension in, "It was the hyena that worried me." This simple sentence directs our attention straight to the animal, foregrounding it as a danger in the reader's mind. Furthermore, the internal shift to the narrator's emotions in worried reinforces the idea that the narrator is clearly in danger. In the middle, the focus shifts to the hyena's appearance as a bungled mix of colours, and a series of lengthy descriptions which form an unsettling image that makes it seem grotesque and unnatural. Soon, the writer builds the tension to a climax as the hyena displays repeated erratic behaviours, such as running laps around the boat in "did 1 lap, 2, 3, 4, 5 and onwards." The repetition here stresses the relentless unpredictability of the creature, trapping both Pi and the reader in a cycle of unease from which there is no escape. Finally, the ending contrasts sharply with this build-up. In a surprise twist, the hyena suddenly did not move from the restricted space for the rest of the day. This creates an anticlimactic ending, which reduces tension somewhat, since Pi seems safe for now. The ending offers temporary relief, but the abrupt change and stillness also reminds us of the animal's potential volatility. This example hits the top band due to the accurate and perceptive selection of evidence and developed analysis of the structural techniques. Again, not easy to do in only 10 minutes, but practice is how you'll get there. Let's move on to question 4, the final question in section A. Question 4 is your evaluation question. Here you are being asked to give your opinion on how effectively the writer presents something, and to support your views with evidence and analysis of techniques. This question is worth 20 marks, so you should spend 25 minutes on it. It is worth mentioning that this question is worth the same amount as the other 3 questions combined, so it's imperative you follow timings carefully to ensure you have sufficient time to answer this one in depth. Many students fall down on this exam spending too much time on questions 2 and 3, which means they have to rush through this vital question, losing lots of marks. Don't let that be you. The question will always start by giving you a specific part of the source to focus on, followed by a statement you are asked to agree or disagree with. In this case, you are told to focus on the second half of the extract, from line 20 onwards. And the statement is, "In this part of the source where the hyena comes out from under the tarpaulin, it could be seen as funny rather than threatening. The writer suggests that the hyena is actually no serious threat to Pi." Beneath this is the question itself, which asks you, to what extent do you agree and or disagree with this statement? Beneath the question, you'll see 3 bullet points reminding you of what to do. Consider your impressions of how the hyena behaves. Comment on the methods the writer uses to present the hyena. Support your response with references to the text. These bullets are not a fixed plan for your answer, but they highlight the 3 things examiners want to see: evaluation, analysis of methods, and textual evidence. So, how should we approach this? You need to make a judgment about how far you agree or disagree with the statement. The highest level answers don't just pick a side, they balance both viewpoints, considering where the hyena might appear comical, but also where it still feels dangerous in this case. A useful way to structure your answer is to give a clear overall opinion in your introduction. Select and analyse evidence that supports the statement, the hyena is funny. Balance this with evidence that challenges the statement, the hyena is threatening. Conclude by returning to your overall argument. Remember, your analysis should focus on the writer's techniques which support the view you are arguing. These can be language or structure techniques, and provided they are from the correct section of the extract, in this case lines 20 onwards, you may reuse evidence from other questions. Let's look at the extract and consider evidence which supports the statement. It did 1 lap, 2, 3, 4, 5 and onwards, non-stop till I lost count. Uses listing and hyperbole to present the hyena as manic and chaotic. The writer's use of onomatopoeia in yip, 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 yip also sounds more comical, like a tiny yappy dog, rather than a savage beast. To argue the hyena is threatening, we could choose the internal focus on Pi's emotions, such as I was seized by fear, or I tensed, and the focus on setting in made the boat shake, also indicate the hyena's power, emphasizing a sense of threat. Since you have 25 minutes for this question, spend 5 minutes carefully selecting your evidence. You could label your quotes A for agree and D for disagree, so you're already organizing them for the argument you'll make. Now, to achieve the top band in the mark scheme, the examiners are looking for the following skills: shows perceptive and detailed evaluation, develops a convincing and critical understanding of ideas, shows perceptive understanding of writer's methods, evaluates critically and in detail the impact of the writer's ideas and methods on the reader, selects a range of judicious textual detail. For the pace of the video, I'll only include an example of the opening and ending of an answer, but I'd be more than happy to upload a video focused on question 4 alone, which includes a full response. Just let me know in the comments if you'd like to see that. So, a top grade opening argument might read like this. I partially agree with this statement, as the hyena is frequently presented in ways that make it appear absurd and comical, but there are also moments where the writer reminds us of its dangerous potential. The writer portrays the hyena as manic and ridiculous through its repeated, restless movements. The line, it did 1 lap, 2, 3, 4, 5 and onwards, non-stop till I lost count, uses both listing and hyperbole to emphasize its chaotic behavior. The endless rhythm makes the animal seem almost mechanical, unable to control itself, which reduces the sense of threat and instead paints a humorous image of futility. Similarly, the onomatopoeia, yip, 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 is far from terrifying. The high-pitched sound is more like a yappy pet dog than a savage predator. These choices make the hyena appear pitiful and silly, entertaining the reader rather than scaring them. Here's an example of an ending argument which offers the opposite opinion, using evidence and evaluation. However, the text also reminds us that the hyena is far from harmless. The internal focus on Pi's fear, for example, I was seized by fear, and I tensed, creates a sharp contrast to the comic imagery. These declaratives highlight Pi's vulnerability, showing that from his perspective, the danger is immediate and overwhelming. The focus on setting also reinforces the sense of threat. When the hyena made the boat shake, its physical power is clear. Here the reader is reminded that beneath the humour is a strong, unpredictable predator whose actions could easily turn violent. In conclusion, I partially agree with the statement. While the hyena is presented in a comical and absurd way through its yapping and restless circling, the writer carefully balances this with moments of real tension that underline its physical threat. This juxtaposition of humour and danger makes the creature unpredictable, keeping the reader both entertained and uneasy about Pi's fate. To give yourself a secure chance of hitting the top marks, you would want to develop further points on both sides of the argument, if time allows. But hopefully this gives you a good overview of the quality necessary to achieve a top band answer. And that brings us to the end of questions 1 to 4. If you followed along, you now know how to tackle each of the reading questions with confidence. Remember, the key is practice. The more past papers you work through, the faster and sharper your answers will become. In the next video, we'll take on question 5, the big writing task. So make sure you check that out too. Thanks for watching and good luck with your revision.